It's the Awake Space Astrology Podcast. I'm Laurie Rivers with you, here to help you with some inspiration to get those aspirations out into the world. Well, August is here. The Mercury is in the microwave. And the energy is starting to build up as Mars keeps sliding closer and closer to Jupiter. And we cover all of that and more on this week's podcast. So grab your coffee, your tea, your matcha, your cocoa, whether it's hot or iced, or you're just drinking the great H2O. And whether we're driving to work or taking the kids to the park or taking a moment to ourselves and just, going to the dog park, folding clothes, sitting and listening and vegging out. Whatever we're doing, I'm glad you're doing it with me. Wowza. Patreon keeps growing. Thank you for making us a very successful listener-supported podcast. We don't spend advertising dollars out there to get us noticed. This is completely organic. You stumbled upon us. You found us, whether it was through TikTok or a friend shared this with you. And we have grown in our supporting membership by leaps and bounds. I'm not going to lie, I was a little overwhelmed. Things have slowed down a little bit on the growth. It's still growing, but we're not like jumping by the 100 every couple of days, which is great. Not that I'm gainsaying it. I'm just saying, when you work really, really hard to build and then you grow that quick, it takes your breath away, so deep breaths. And so I'm recalibrating everything. And Mercury retrograde is a great time to recalibrate. If you didn't listen to last week's episode, then go back and listen to that. I talked about the Mercury retrograde. If you're a patron, make sure you go listen to the patron only episode from last week, where I gave you tips and hints on not only the new moon in Leo, but also how to work with the Mercury retrograde energy. Mercury retrograde isn't all bad at all. And with Jupiter and Mars coming into a conjunction, honestly, I think that's going to play a bigger role in a lot of the snafus that happen this coming month, or this month, in the coming weeks. In this episode, I address a video a listener sent me about somebody, getting mad at us astrologers who say for people to read for the rising signs because it's elitist. And I'm going to just say, yes, astrology, actual real astrology is elitist, always has been. I give a history rundown, but I also give you some tips and hints if you don't know your birth time, how to read horoscopes to kind of figure out your rising sign, like in a not exact way, but in a, generalized way. You'll find what works best when you read it that way. Because certain areas of life get activated by the transits, and that's the moving planets, and good astrologers write their horoscopes that way. So you can check that part out, first part of the podcast. Then I talk about the Mars-Jupiter conjunction and what I think we're going to see happening in the world with that. Now, for patrons, I'll be talking more in general about what you personally can do with that. That always goes into the Patreon. And no guarantees on when that's coming out, because I did an event with the real medium Matilda. That's her name on TikTok. We are co-hosts in the podcast Sassy Seers. All three of our podcasts were in the top 100 spirituality podcasts for the Apple Podcasts top 100 chart. We did it for like a week. And again, we are both independent, supported by our listeners. And Sassy Seers isn't even supported yet. We'll be adding a support to that, but we were just playing around, seeing what we could come up with. We're on hiatus as we figure out season number 2. But we did an event on August 3rd that was supposed to be 90 minutes. Oh, we are such fools. We were very thorough, covering Europe, the Middle East, Australia and New Zealand. She can talk. And then North, Central, and South America, covering the United States last. Of course, we did a cleanup with that because we covered the United States so much. So we're trying to get other regions in the world. So there was that. I think we covered Japan as well, and all of the Mediterranean, which includes North Africa, of course. But yeah, so that was stuff we were talking about in the event. It wasn't a podcast, guys. This was a full predictive event. We went for over 4 hours, almost 5. And it was long. And then, of course, Mercury was getting ready to station. So did we have little tech snafus? Yes, we did. We had an automated message go out because we forgot about it being set from the last event. So 229 people got an email they didn't need to get. So the real link's coming out. Matilda's going to take care of that. She's got readings right now. So she'll do it when she's got a chance, and you'll get your reading link. And then I'm going to sit and edit that video up, and we'll have it available in our Patreon shops. We're going to try to make it a little more affordable for people. And we're thinking again about how we're going to serve people jointly, because we're both really amazing on our own. We're both highly accurate. Our audiences introduced us way back in November. I think they were trying to get my attention with Matilda in August or September, but I was like, I don't have time for this. I got a lot of stuff going on. And finally somebody kept saying, oh my gosh, that's exactly what Matilda said. I was like, who is this Matilda chick? And then I saw her, and she uses a cartoon filter sometimes. She's starting to move to her real face. And I was so jealous she thought of that. I was like, oh my God, did that even exist when I started on TikTok? Because I'm a Scorpio rising. Hello, do I like to be on camera? No, I do not. I don't even like having my picture taken. So you may not believe that because I do a lot of TikToks, but seriously, I'm not fond of doing video. I was forced to teach video performance when I was an instructor at an online business school way back in 2013, 2014. And streaming was becoming a thing, live streaming, going live on Facebook. They were like, we have 300 students for you. And I was like, that's tough because I do voiceover and audio, but I'm not willing to be on camera. And they were like, no, you're doing it. I was like, shit. So I wish I would have thought of the cartoon filter. People are like, if they were really real, they wouldn't use it. No, there's lots of reasons to use a cartoon filter when you're giving predictions. So I honored that. And then I invited her onto my podcast because I was like, okay, who is this chick? And we got on like a house on fire. So we're both very, very grateful to our audiences for connecting us. We have very complementary skills, complementary background training. My background is a political analyst. She is a behavioral economist. And we also have other skill sets for between admin and marketing and different forms of it. And, we've done a lot of stuff and we enjoy what we do. We're both people of service. And we care about people making it through these very interesting times. So we're both going to use this Mercury retrograde, which is 3 weeks, to just kind of recalibrate and look at how we're doing things. We both grew a lot. And so how do we meet that growth? How do we keep serving people at the highest level we can? So stay tuned. We'll come up with stuff on our own and jointly. So that's kind of fun. It was a great event. It was a great event. It was very detailed. Again, we're both audaciously accurate on our own. You put us together and the attunement is just chef's kiss. It's a very good interplay. And we're looking forward to doing other events in the future, but we're trying to think of how to make it more budget friendly and how to get more people able to get the same good information easily. So there's that. Mercury retrograde is a great time for that kind of thing of sitting back, thinking about what you want to do, how you want to do it, how you want to grow, what you want to do. It is not inherently bad. Let's see what else on this podcast. Obviously, we've got our patron shout outs because we've grown so much. And wowza. Still blowing my mind. Our newest patrons get the shout outs. Got a couple of things up in the Patreon. I don't think everybody always knows where to investigate. So just a quick reminder, if you're a brand new patron or you think about joining the Patreon, click around, look in the collections, look in the shop. You have access to so many benefits as a patron of the Awake Space. So make sure you do that. The magazine came out. I'll be reading my thoughts for the month. It's an article that, every single month I write my thoughts on the month. And I read over the first page of the Mars-Jupiter conjunction, which deals with the global events versus the personal aspect and how to use that energy. That's in the magazine. I'll be getting that up in the Patreon shop maybe by Monday night, maybe Tuesday. I don't know. I got to go do life stuff. This week. So it's been crazy. And when you're a person who is in service, you often don't serve yourself enough. So that's something I'm focusing on this week as well. So I had somebody send me a video, and in this next segment, I'm going to address that because it's important to understand the history of astrology. And then I give you tips and hints on how to play around figuring out your rising sign if you don't know your time and you don't want to do a rectification service, because as an experienced astrologer, I didn't just fall off the astrology book tree. I've been at this for 3 decades. I've read hundreds of thousands of charts, and I've rectified hundreds of people's birth times, and about 40 or 50 over the last 30 years have come back with, hey, you were within 10 minutes of my birth time, because they found their original birth certificate with the time. Not everybody gets a time on their birth certificate. Not everybody knows what day they were born. And if you don't know what day you're born, I can't help you, because you need that at the very least, your day and place. But times can be kind of worked through on a rectification. But I give you a little hint on how to kind of do a ballpark rectification for yourself. It won't get you the degree. I can get you really close on the degree. But you can at least figure out which rising sign horoscope to read. And so, but yeah. So there's that. That's what we're going to talk about next. Then we'll do Patreon shout outs. Then I talked to you about the Mars-Jupiter conjunction. Then I give you the lowdown on the week and what I think we're going to see in the headlines. And just to remind you, there's always hope. So let's get our favorite beverage together and get this party started. All right, you got your coffee, your tea, your water. If you're able to listen in Florida, how you doing? You doing all right? Oh gosh, East Coast, I'm sorry, but it's not going to get easier this year. There's a lot of storms, so doesn't mean they're going to hit everywhere exactly the same, but just be careful out there and do the best you can. We got you in our thoughts. Let's talk about astrology and elitism, because I have often said with the history of astrology, it is something that was classist. Because one, you had to be able to read to be an astrologer. The ancient art, as it was described in the video sent to me, of astrology, or tool, I think they described it as an ancient tool. Not everybody got to use it back then either. You had to have land and money, some kind of wealth to be able to afford an astrologer, because astrologers were like very, very powerful. They were elite. One could read, and they were philosophers, scientists, priests. They held the power. And they helped people in power retain their power. So to say, oh, it's elitist. Yeah, it is. And sun sign astrology came around in the 19th century because people wanted to sell more books, and most people, they were lucky. They were like, it's elitist to assume people know their birth time. Honey, it's elitist to know for people to know their birthday. There's places in the world where people don't know what day they were born. Okay. Not just because people use different calendars, because there's more than one calendar in use around the world, but also because if you're at a subsistence level, paying attention to what day is probably not on your mind, So yeah, there is some elitism to it. That's there. Now, professional astrologers can rectify a chart. Now, if you don't know your birth time, traditionally, astrologers will set the chart for 12 noon. It's 12 noon, not 12 a.m., 12 noon. And they set it for that. And I'm not saying read for that rising sign, but what I can say is you can kind of work backwards. Read for all the rising sign, and the one that really sticks with it, especially well-written horoscopes, then over time, like give it like 3, 4, 5 months. And you'll be like, oh, maybe this resonates the most. These things have happened the most that are in alignment with that energy. So that's something you can do, to just kind of work backwards and be like, well, this is a ballpark of where I'm at. But the chiding of the astrological community that we're elitists, any actual astrologer who knows the history of astrology is going to go, yeah, it is. It is, because it was like the academic nerds of the metaphysical world. And I can already hear people saying, but people have used the moon forever. Yeah, people have used the moon and the sun, whether they knew astrology or not. And they would use moon phases to plant, to harvest, to do spells and, spellcraft. But that's not astrology per se. Okay, it's an aspect of it, but it's not inherently what astrologers do. Okay. So like when witches think they have to be astrologers too, if it is traditional folkcraft, okay, and I am not dismissing it as less than, I'm just saying if the average everyday person from the 1300s or the 900s, often we're not literate in the same way you needed to be literate to be an astrologer. They were literate in their own signs, symbols, and portents. Okay. They were knowledgeable on wildcrafting, herbalism, women's magic as well, their own cultural practices. And they had a great understanding of that. And using the moon phases would be part of that. By the way, the moon class that's 11 minutes long, patrons were asking about that. That's up in the collections now. So is the love and sex and astrology class that I did like 3 years ago. I just hadn't enabled all the new tiers yet. So a lot of you got the notification yesterday on Sunday, because it was our last intermediate astrology class of the 14-week session. And such a beautiful class. Such a beautiful and such thoughtful questions, thoughtful discourse. I love watching people grow and just watching people come into their confidence. It's so beautiful. And so anyway, I remembered to put that class up because we were talking about sexuality and how it shows up in the chart. And so I remembered, oh yeah, I did that class. Hey, I think that's for all patrons. Let me go check. So you can check that out if you're a patron. It may not be what you think it is. It's a little spicy. I'm a little plain spoken, but I try to keep things, it's not so much appropriate, but just like taking the charge out of very natural subjects. We've made sexuality be so taboo when it need not be. And it's a way to control people, So just understanding that it's part of being human. It's part of being a mammal. I know we're in the religion and spirituality chart still. And so I'm just going to say we're mammals. We're not above anything or below anything on the planet. We are not the guardians of the planet. In fact, if we were, we'd done a better job. Okay. We should be better stewards if that was what we were charged with. However, yeah, I love that we're making these other podcasts like spend some ad dollars or do more marketing to their people and not just take it for granted, because I don't spend money on marketing. We're all organic babies. So I'm like, oh, they got to work for their spots in the chart. That's kind of fun. So back to that. understand that if you don't have your birth time, it's okay. It's okay. Not everybody's going to. Certain states don't record them, especially with the influence of evangelical Christianity. Believe it or not, they try to deter people from having charts made with, it's so dumb. It's a lack of knowledge about their own theology. I'm holding back, but anyway. So it's not, we don't use spirits to read astrology charts. So I love on TikTok when you get those people like, I used to be really into astrology, but the spirits scared me. I'm like, then you weren't doing astrology, because astrology is a framework of understanding. And if you were working with spirits and demons, then you weren't doing astrology. You just weren't engaging your brain. There's none of that. It is literally like reading a clock, understanding that different things mean different things, and deciphering symbols. And it's much closer to philosophy than it is anything else. And so there's so many misconceptions about astrology out there that amuse me. They used to make me angry, but now I just laugh. I'm just like, if you really believe that's true, please get checked out. Please. I'm not saying egregores don't exist. I'm not saying that different energy, or there's dark forces or light forces, that they don't exist. They do. Every thought that's ever been thought does exist. And that includes very strong beliefs and thought forms that form, which is an egregore. But seriously, folks, to do astrology well, you need to use your frontal lobe. And if that's elitist, fine. Fine. Oh, God. So, and again, I'm going to say, I rectify charts for people. If you want to kind of guess on your own, you have to be able to step back from your biases. And last week I talked about cognitive bias. So things you believe really strongly, that's going to get in your way of understanding. You're going to have to step back a little bit and just observe, just be an observer, and not try to make things fit one way or another. But if you read the horoscopes, especially if you're in my Patreon and you get the magazine, read my horoscopes, see what matches and what doesn't over a 3-4 month period of time. Okay. And then you can get a kind of a good idea. So there's that. That's me on my high horse today. Patreon's still growing. That's a thing. We've slowed down a little, and I'm kind of grateful. I am grateful because I was like, oh my God, I have to change things up to meet this demand now. So many people, wow, to be listener supported by so many people. We've got over 1,600 members. That's amazing to me. That's not easily done. And it's taken a lot of work to get here. And so that's kind of that combo of fate and free will, right? The free will was in the effort of building and having hope and faith that I could reach more and more people and help people find their value, help them understand what makes them unique as individuals. I know everybody wants to feel special, and yet you are. There's no need to seek out extra special information to know you're special. Yeah. Mr. Rogers said so, right? So to be able to help people understand what's coming up in the world, and we have a lot coming up in the world. We do. I'll talk about that a little bit later on in the podcast. There's some serious situations brewing in the world, and they continue into 2025. And in 2025, we're really going to have to come together as a global community to deal with climate change. It will become apparently obvious. This isn't God punishing us. It's not the earth punishing us, but it is consequences for us not being good stewards of the earth. Okay. When we acidify the ocean, when we leave garbage everywhere, when we conspicuously consume non-natural materials, synthetic materials, what do you think is going to happen? So we're dealing with that. But humanity makes it through to the other side, guys. This is not the end times. If I had $20 for every time some Yahoo said it was going to be the end of the world, I'd have several $1,000s. So I know it can be nerve-wracking and scary, but and it will be intense. And so that's why I create audios for you to listen to in Patreon, the guided meditations to help soothe you, give a lot of information on how to prepare. We'll talk a little bit more about this. We've got a big full moon brewing this month as well that will be very dramatic. And the Democratic Convention in Chicago happens on the day of the full moon. What the hell were they thinking? Oh my God. I don't understand why people do not use astrologers. I do not understand it. I'll talk about that next week. I won't talk about that this week. I already gave kind of a preview of it in my Patreon. It's like last month I gave kind of a rundown at the beginning of July in a patron-only podcast. So you can search it up. You got to click around in the Patreon, guys. You got to click around. There's so much there. So speaking of patrons, without you, there is no me. Let's do a real quick patron shout out. Again, I'm breaking these into chunks. Otherwise, we're going to be here for a while. So we'll do that next. All right. You heard the music. We have a bunch of new patrons. We've got Cheryl, Clover, Melinda, Things Jen Says, Candy Moon, Megan, Aprila, Nina, Kayla, Aaron R, Sherry, Jenny, Jess, E. Willis, R. Contreras, Olivia, Michelle, Kate, DeMarquine, Laura, Lola, Mel, Jeremy, Mercury Queen, Andrew, Jody, Ethan, Lace, Nicole, Hoya, I think it's Hoya, it could be Joya, Marcy, Courtney, Stacy, Brinley, Jessica, Shade, Jonique, and if it's not Jonique, I think it's Jonique, Lavender, Jenna, Teresa, Melissa, Mary, Sheila, Sabrina, Grecia, or Grisha, Renee, Mommy, Tyler, the daughter of Lilith, Paul, Carolyn, Virginia, Jordan, Brenda, Lupe, Carrie, RV, Emily, Jenna, Diana, Coral, Cynthia, Cindy, Stephanie, John, Sarah, Serena, Paradox, Priestess, Kelly, Mama Shar, Connie, Sophia, Hannah, Amy, Kate, Rhonda, Christ, Catherine, Josephine, Kenneth, Rhonda, Lisa, Val, Sarah, Kate, Leah, Aaron, A. Hunter, Stephanie, Robin, Grace, Kelsey, Alicia, Taylor, Christopher, Alyssa, Allison, Natalie, Mama Des, Robin, Lexi, Lori, Likes, Lonnie, Stir It Up Ranch, what a pretty horse, Andrea, Taylor, Christine, Kimberly, A-Bomb, PG230, Retired, Kayleen, Ann, Lori or Cherry, Allie221, Christina, Matea, Jennifer, Shanti, Anthony, Kari, Chelsea, Joyce, Anna, Kathy, the Astral Gemini, Jody, Jacob, Mac, Ruby, and Tina. And we're going to leave it there for now. There we go. Okay. Now, one of the perks I do for the magazine tier and up is I read all of the articles every month. But I thought I'd give you here on the free podcast the thought for the month article that I wrote, because August is its own game. And I've been concerned about August for over a year. I have it in my 2024 year ahead. Obviously, if you're a patron, you can access that through the shop. And that's supporting patrons. Okay. So August, people are done. And you're going to see a lot of people in the streets and a lot of very reactive people. And we're seeing that all over the world right now. Yeah. So let's talk about it. Thoughts for the month. It's complicated. August 2024 is a complicated month. Sure, the energy seems lighter and there's hope in the air, but again, I've told you for months to hold on to hope. So hope we have. And once Mercury stations retrograde on the 4th, we're going to start seeing reality set in. Maybe. Mercury in Virgo stations retrograde later on the 4th of August, and there will be a lot that needs fact-checking. It doesn't stay in Virgo long. It slides back into Leo. But it's not the big, bold statements we see. Instead, it's going to be a little weird. From the 4th through the 27th, we're looking at the weird, the bizarre, and the peculiar, be it politically, weather-wise, or with technology. And we could see some very interesting transportation matters. It's not a good time to launch or start anything during this particular Mercury retrograde. However, it's a great time to review structures, resource allocation, and dive into planning for the future. Do your best not to be distracted by shiny objects and media spin. It's going to feel like we're in a euphoric drug haze while Mercury is retrograde the first few days. And then there's going to be some events that snap us back into the cold light of reality. If you live anywhere prone to earthquakes, please have a go bag ready before the full moon on August 19th. That means have all of your documents in a pouch and have some snacks or food on hand, emergency cash. And if you can, it's a great idea to have a gallon or two of water put aside. And I'm going to say that even in storm-prone areas as well. It's time to prepare for the weather to start turning, and we'll see more extremes right out of the gate. As Mars in Gemini slides closer to Jupiter, we will see historic storms in strange places. Be ready as per your location. Yes, it's global. The Olympics may see some devastating injuries around the weekend of August 3rd. We could see sabotage and or terrorist attacks, some of them foiled or failed as we head towards mid-August. The DNC convention in Chicago might have a party atmosphere for the most part. However, there may be vehicular violence outside of the convention or stabbings. Globally, people are fed up with authoritarianism and are ready to show up and even fight for humanity on one level. But people may also be fighting because they fear their loss. Okay, so what we're seeing in the UK right now, a lot of the riots, that's frustration spilling over. It's misplaced. It's based in racism. But if anybody thought the UK wasn't a place full of racism, they didn't live there. I always get surprised when Americans are like, Europe is so much less racist than America. And I'm like, have you been there? Longer than 2 weeks, like for the honeymoon time to wear off, because it can really be very interesting depending on where you're at. And people, like, we're feeling the squeeze of a bad global economy. People are worried about resources. There's not enough housing. Food is astronomical globally. Food supply chain is at risk with climate change, and also because private equity firms have brought it up. And that's a problem. So one of the most radical things you could do is literally just grow some lettuce on your counter, which I warned you guys about last year. I was like, hey, you want to be growing your leafy greens? And we've had, salmonella, listeria, E. coli all year long. All year long. What did the pandemic teach us? It taught us that people don't wash their hands, which is so, so gross. And they use poopy water to irrigate crops. It's really disgusting, especially for leafy greens. I'm like, really? The caca water? Caca de l'eau? Really? De l'eau de caca? No, not leafy greens. So the more you can grow for yourself, the better. My folks are in their late 70s and they hurt. I love them, but they're in pain. But they've got a beautiful garden going, and we ate so many green beans. My gosh, just the green beans. You know, the tomatoes had a rough year, but they're coming along. But the green beans have been great. I love green beans out of the garden, and it was so nostalgic. It reminded me of when I was a kid, and we had a big garden. They don't have a big garden anymore. They have a little garden. They do a lot of container gardening. Okay. You can do that. You can do that in an apartment. You don't even need, you can do like hydroponic. You can grow just a little bit, but just enough. Because a head of lettuce, if you just pick off a few pieces, I mean, think about how big is the salad you're eating. Okay. So there's that. And lettuce grows quick. And so does spinach. And so do spring onions. And so does watercress if you want to be bougie and have tea time sandwiches. Those are all things you can do. So I'm going to tell you, this month is the month to prepare. The next 3 weeks, I want you to prepare for weather, seismic activity, wherever you live in the world, however you can prepare to the best of your ability. Not everybody can blow a lot of money on stuff, nor do you have to. Okay. If you can get rice, if you can get dried beans, lentils are very high in protein. Okay. There's lots of recipes online. Okay. Have alternative heat sources for cooking. Okay. But I also saw months and months ago, if you have a muffin tin, let's say you're out of power for a while because a storm came through. Okay. You can use tea lights, and tea lights are always good to have in case of emergency. Okay. So tea lights, because if you don't have electricity or extra batteries, things like that, for maybe your crank, getting a crank radio with a light, a crank flashlight is good too, or one like a Faraday one where you shake it. Those are great. But an alternative cooking source could be muffin tins, put tea lights in them, and put a frying pan on. And a chef was doing that on TikTok, and it worked. You could fry an egg. Those are potentials. But you got to be careful with that because it's flame. If you have camping gear, don't use cooking stoves inside. Don't use barbecues inside. You don't want to get carbon monoxide poisoning. And it's hard if a storm is raging, obviously, so if you can, maybe have some MREs, not everybody can do that, but meals ready to eat, that kind of thing. So it's good to have that stuff on hand. There isn't going to be a lot of places not impacted by weather to some degree, whether it's temperatures, storms of all kinds. And as we move towards the end of the year, it's just going to be continuously wetter. So Florida, man, I'm sorry, guys. I've been warning you for a long time. And this is not a moral failure. People are not being punished by having a hurricane hit them. It may feel like that, but you're not getting punished for anything. It's just the way the weather is working because of climate change. So watch out, Gulf Coast and East Coast. You got stuff coming your way as well. So there's that. Let me go back to the magazine here. And we'll talk a little bit about what I think is coming up. With the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. And again, next week, we're going to talk about the full moon because it's packing a freaking wallop. But I want you more ready for the Mars-Jupiter conjunction. We've had so many different things go on. So big action is the Mars-Jupiter conjunction. And on an individual level, this can be super productive. Okay. And I'll talk about that in the patron only podcast. But let's talk about what I think is going to happen. I'll read the first page of the article. The first page of the article deals with the mundane. The second page, I talk a little bit more about how you can use the energy. So Mars and Jupiter are meeting up again, this time in Gemini. We are bound to see some big words and enthusiastic energy. And even if things look a little wild, there'll be a weird kind of optimism. And yet there will be some big boom-like energy out in the world. It's like two different worlds exist at the same time. The one with drones, bombs, and vehicular violence, and the other with a dance party atmosphere. It will feel surreal in a way, and the important thing for everyone to remember is neither version of the world is all there is or all there will be. In my 2025 Year Ahead seminar, I predicted war expanding in the Middle East, and I'm unconvinced it won't at this stage. Things are highly unstable, and it looks like things will continue to expand for the next 6 months at least. Don't let that take your eyes off the European Union and NATO, which will also be facing some interesting times. There's been a lot of information not reported with the urgency it deserves. Sabotage, border skirmishes, errant drones and missiles accidentally hitting where they weren't supposed to go. There was even a car explosion in Germany a few months ago that was just an accident, where the police reported it was full of petrol, gas. Back in my day, that was called a car bomb. The enforced innocence of high control media is going to be at odds with reality as we move through the month, and disasters will come and fade quickly into the background as some new shiny object appears. It's a now you see it, now you don't kind of vibe. The Democratic Party convention held in Chicago is bound to have a party atmosphere as people feel the winds of change from the fear and uncertainty of an elder statesman being unable to confront his elder rival effectively. And as much as security may be tight where the big gathering is held, there may indeed be some spectacular goings on outside of the convention center. We could see vehicular violence, a drone or some explosion near the convention center, or by a bridge or a major road that disrupts the ability to navigate the city. Now it could also be weather. Seriously, bombs and weather look eerily similar because they are intense and cause damage. So Chicago could see some big wind, tornadoes, or microbursts during the convention period as well. In Europe, we could see things heat up, both with border skirmishes and with public unrest. People are done, and they're going to be more than willing to throw hands or bottles or even pull a blade here and there. In South America, Venezuela is going to be suffering from more violence and instability, especially after the Mars-Jupiter conjunction as we head towards the full moon. There are massive shakeups, and you could see people intensifying the resistance. Don't be surprised if there are bombs or attacks from the U.S. towards the leader attempting to hold on to power. It's a mix of disco balls and shards of glass. So, and I haven't had a chance to talk about Venezuela too much. I am concerned about what's happening in Venezuela and that full moon. I guess I'll talk about that more next week. If you're concerned about Venezuela, and so many of you have asked me about it, you have every right to be concerned. It is going to be very intense, and it's going to be bloody. Around the full moon, after the full moon, it's a lot. It's a lot. It could lead to the deposing of the leader. I'm not convinced the United States getting involved is a good idea. Those are precedents that are very much a slippery slope. But it depends on the will of the people of Venezuela and how they view that kind of intervention. And I'm not familiar enough with it. So again, I'm a Middle East specialist. So South America, I'm less understanding of. I've been doing a little bit of research so I can speak competently on the matter. But here's the deal. What I care about is if you have family there and you're concerned about them, they need to not be out. Okay. I would be very careful about sending my kids to school. I'd be very vigilant about my property. it's going to be pretty ugly, guys. So if you're a listener in Venezuela, God bless you, and remain safe. Okay. That's kind of how I feel about anybody. If you're in Turkey, if you're in Germany, what the hell is going on with you? We spent a lot of time on Germany in Matilda and my presentation of the event we did on the 3rd. We looked at Germany, Poland, Russia, Turkey. It's going to be a lot, guys. We're going to see things heat up in the Middle East. I know we're trying to avoid further destabilization, but man, it's going to be a lot. So it's easy to get pulled into all of this. It's easy to get pulled into all of this and be very overwhelmed. I am concerned about security at the Democratic National Convention. Again, I'll talk about that in more detail next week. I really, if you are going to be there as a delegate, yay you, first of all, and way to participate, but do keep your eyes very peeled when you're outside of the convention center. I think security should be pretty good on the inside. But if you see suspicious cars, vans, trucks, packages, suspicious people, don't racially profile. But if you see something, say something. Don't keep it to yourself. I do expect something to happen with a bridge or a major roadway. And it might be more like there is a second venue. It may be something to do with the second venue. Okay. Or on that, like a connector to that. Maybe if there's like a transportation thing, like a tram or a bus or a shuttle bus, there might be something to do with that. So that's something to keep in mind if you're going to Chicago. If you live in Chicago, just be ready for a clusterfuck of traffic and even infrastructure damage. And it could be weather. It may not be a bomb. It could be weather. But people are, especially since that's happening on the full moon. And again, I'll talk to you about that next week. Oh my God. People need to hire astrologers. What's with them? So, what can you do? You can do what you can do. There's nothing, just like I wrote about in the Fate and Free Will article, they're intertwined. It's not a moral failing to be caught up in a natural disaster. It's not a moral failing to be caught up in a situation. You might have the skills and the knowledge necessary to meet the moment. If somebody passes away due to a natural disaster, they're not being punished. That it could have been their time. Okay. It's not a moral failing. We have to get over this Calvinist idea that God favors certain people and punishes other people. Part of being physical is being vulnerable in the physical environment, period, is not a moral failing. Part of being spiritual is letting go of resistance around that. Okay. And needing everything to be fair, and needing, life isn't fair sometimes, and letting go of resentments, letting go of anger or fear or doubt or shame or blame. Those are all feelings and beliefs that are used to control you. And if you're controlling yourself and oppressing yourself from that, then you're falling right into the control mechanisms. Mercury retrograde is a really good time to assess those ideas and beliefs. Okay. All right. Let's do another round of patron shout outs. And then we'll take a look at some patron only Q&A. All right, here's our newest patrons. The second round, we've got Michaela, Kat, Katie, Hope, Amanda, Laurie, Snow, Jessica, Wendy, Leah, Simara, LB, Rainbows and Sunshine Gal, Julie FM, Mina, Courtney, Lua, Karina, Rhonda, Lindsay, Rochelle, Vanessa, Marie, Stephanie, Emily, Pamela, Chris, 2206 Step, Kendall, Bridget, Amanda, Alyssa, Sol, Sarah, Dan, hang on, I gotta look, Shadia, Ashley, Stacy the Vulture Witch, I love that, Emily, Jen, Enfantom, Nyaria, or Valerie, Mimi, Michelle, Emily, Ellen, Christine, Tiffany, Ash, Rukia, Sunny, Sierra, Corey, Jennifer, Chin, I hope I said your name right, Hillary, Paul, Lauren, Parrish, Brittany, Kev, Gail, Lavina, Jessica, Carlos, Christine, Lady, Mercy Lynn, Hudson, Shannon, Zion, Adrian, Nikki, Nicole, Megan, Zandra, Amy, Betty, Pelu, Caitlin, Jojo, Derek, Ali, okay, I gotta say this right. Charame, Tay, Victoria, Lisa, Tammy, Tori, Amanda, Dina, Mariah, Rebecca, Andrea, Stephanie, Beth, Aaron, YS, Patricia, Elan, Lee, Winter, Shelma, Sarah, Kimberly, Nabila, Dahlia, Candace, Serena, Raz, Milagros, Cameron, Rhonda, Cassie, Stephanie, Jess, Caitlin, Maggie, Chase, Carol, Patricia, Sophie, Taylor, Sparkleworm, Meg, Stephanie, Deborah, Courtney, Wesley, Lainey, Taylor, Marie, Emily, Kelly, Emily, Sarah, M. Knight, Mallory, Carrie, Rebecca, Sanji, Brandy, Courtney, Ashley, Paige, Kelly, DeBismus, Robin, Barbara, Courtney, Alexandra, Stephanie, Sabrina, Appy, Paul, Yari, Darlene, Haley, Steph, Mavi, Sydney, Jackie, Justus 3, Stephanie, Caitlin, Samantha, Steffi, Trinity, Grace Ann, Melanie, Stacy, Angie, Amanda, Maurice, Daniel, Jennifer, Robin, Renee, Tracy, B, AH, Rachel, Barbara, Allie, Bianca, Mike, M. Hawk, Steph, Isabel, Kim, Emily, Carly-Ann, Carla, Molly, Deborah, Terry, Leah, Sabrina, Abigail, Andrew, RR, Chris Silva, Suzanne, Dawn, Lauren, Allie, Bailey, Army Lee, Carrie, Dawn, Deanne, and you guys, I'm really honored. This is nuts. We're gonna do some cool stuff. So hang on. I'm going shopping tomorrow and I have to do life stuff. Okay, I have to go to the grocery store. But I will be thinking about what we do moving forward because I had to get that event out of the way. All right. That's wild, guys. So let's look at what's going to happen this week. I'll give a brief overview. I'll go a little into more detail for the patron-only podcast, and that'll come out later in the week. Let's get to it. Let's look at what's going to happen this week in my What to Expect in the Headlines. All right, what's going to happen this week? Well, we're building volatility as Mars, the planet of aggression, moves towards Jupiter, the planet of expansion. I've said for quite some time that we're going to see an increase in missiles, drones, bombs, things that fly in the air. We could see some issues with air transportation in general, now that Mercury is retrograde. This could be trains, planes, automobiles, freeways, etc. Now, on a personal level, this can be great. I'll be going through that in the patron-only podcast. I'm not telling you any of this stuff to freak you out. It is to be aware and prepared versus shocked. Okay, I don't like surprises. It's one of the reasons I became an astrologer. Once I realized the potential, I could look at things and then plan accordingly. Okay, so weather-wise, it's going to just keep getting more volatile, guys. If you're on the East Coast, the weather moving forward all the way through 2025 is going to be it's stormy weather, okay? And it's big. And this is exactly what climate scientists have been saying for decades. Okay. It is still hard to predict. Like, meteorologists have trouble with this at the moment. Okay. But I've been saying it for over a year. And just to give you a reminder of what I saw coming up for August back in 2023. Okay, so these were my predictions. Remember, I do the year ahead. The 2025 is available in my Patreon shop. What did I write? August is highly chaotic. There's going to be accidents on a grand scale, possible air traffic disruption or crashes, could see massive windstorms or air quality issues with chemical plants or nuclear facilities, leaks, etc., especially as we head towards next week. Not a good time to launch anything, be it a rocket or a project, until Mercury stations direct. It's just really wild, and everything will be topsy-turvy. People will be shouting the quiet part out loud, whether it's popular or unpopular. Labor disputes could turn violent. Manufacturing runs into issues with either faulty machinery, lack of parts, or safety protocols breached. We could see big upsets in political parties, especially at the state level. People are done, D-O-N-E. And I said back in July that right-wing nationalists would be rising up, and that's continuing, okay, especially when we're looking at Great Britain. So what have we got in this week ahead, looking at the lunations, because I have predictions for every 2.5 days in the magazine, and I'll just give you some thumbnail sketches from the 3rd through the 5th. Okay, 3rd through the 5th, with the moon in Leo, and it's still in Leo. We just had that new moon Sunday. Forest fires, lightning strikes, arsons, and fires kind of get out of control because of wind, so we're not going to see any relief there. On the West Coast, tropical storm forms into hurricane, and that's what it looks like. And guys, I wrote that a while ago. This is actually a continuation. These I've had written for months, and this, we're watching that happen as this lunation is here, and we look at Florida, Georgia, those low-lying areas. Tensions might erupt in the Straits of Taiwan, territorial waters of the Philippines. Issues with Iran could be leadership and actions taken with drones or SAMs. Just saw a headline out of Axios that Blinken is warning that Hezbollah and Iranian-backed groups might be hitting out of Lebanon to Israel. Israel-Lebanon conflict expands. Issues with drones, missiles, and incendiary devices. That's some of that. Political leader and heads of state under attack. We could see assassination attempts. Banking or currency crisis. Major accident on an interstate or international railway. Trump campaign may make announcement or have a scandal. Potential accident of significance at the Paris Olympics. Terrorist attacks involving vehicles and or drones. Internet disruptions. Issues with satellites, cables, and communication. Data breach and or payment gateway disruptions. Royalty in the news, not just the United Kingdom. Celebrity scandal, financial or due to hedonism. Mining accident, collapse, or issue with minerals, mineral rights, and mining, solar flare or solar storm, typhoons, cyclones, wind, fires of all kinds, big tornadoes possible. The transits are global. Accidents or political upheaval can also be big storms or natural events, and vice versa. Moon in Virgo happens the 5th through the 8th. We're looking at healthcare, hospitals, pharma, nurses, doctors in crisis or strike. Okay, and again, this is global. Big storms cause large, and this is capitalized, by the way. Big storms cause large amounts of damage on the ground. Harvests and harvest failures due to weather events or temperatures. Issues with communicable diseases, epidemics and pandemics, viruses and bacteria. Biological and or chemical weapons used and or discovered, and that could be any conflict zone. Missile, drone, or rocket launch goes wrong. Issue with International Space Station or the astronauts. I hope they're okay for their safety. Expect issues with supply chain, trucking, vehicles, and train security issues for Kamala Harris and her family, including in-laws. Offshore earthquakes over 5.8 in the Asia-Pacific region, Indonesia, Taiwan, Pacific Islands, New Zealand, off the coast of Chile, Peru, Mexico, California, and Oregon. Potential in Japan, Alaska, offshore, closer to Vancouver Island. Mexico has political unrest, issues with weather and or seismic activity. Things are shaken up in Mexico. Border crossings, issues with mountains and summits. Attacks on judges and civil servants. This is global. Immigration and customs matters. Global. Rules, policy, and procedures under the microscope were breached without consequences, and we could see more assassination attempts. And this is global. And then, let's see. Just want to make sure. And rounding out the week, we end up with the moon in Libra. And that's the 8th through the 10th. Massive windstorm, hurricane, tropical storms with lightning and hail, infrastructure damage, air traffic disruptions due to labor strikes and contract negotiations, potentially. But it could also be the weather. Accidents on roads and in the air due to wind, weather, and mechanical failures. Public protests increase. Fighting on the ground. Excessive use of force in play. Satellites and communication disruptions. Internet failures or technical issues in general. Scandal in the fashion industry or luxury brand in the hot seat. Terrorist attack. France, Germany, Italy, or in the USA. Noted violence in New York City. Issues concerning Lebanon, Iran, Israel, and Palestine. Donald Trump under pressure, could be finances, Supreme Court or other high court judges, global or international court in the news, ICC or ICJ issue new warrant rulings or warrants. Prosecutor makes a bold move, could be Jack Smith. New information leaked about U.S. officials and or financial matters to do with an elected official. Would this be Marjorie Taylor Greene or someone else in that camp? Issue in New York City, could be a bomb, a gas attack, or public violence, subways or public squares. Be careful in New York City, folks. It's gonna be interesting. Politicians start changing their tune, rhetoric changes, and propaganda spins in a different direction. Issues to do with international organizations, Commonwealth, etc. Security issue in Chicago ahead of Democratic convention. Air traffic disruptions, limited airspace. And then the 11th, which is when the 10th through the 13th. So, because the moon will change signs on the 10th from Libra to Scorpio. Natural event or terrorist attack that is difficult to control or contain. We could see huge storm, big rain, snow, ice melt, issues with flooding and huge waves. Depends on which hemisphere you're in. Violence escalates in Venezuela. Sizable earthquake over 6.0 potential in all major fault lines looking at Oregon coast, Mexico, on the west coast of it, mid-Atlantic ridge and or Indonesia, Philippines, and Japan. Internet disruptions, payment gateway failures, hacking and ransomware, graveyards, cemeteries, catacombs, and mortuaries will be in the news. Waterborne illnesses, toxic waste, sewage and sewers, water quality at stake, poison groundwater. Issues with oil refinery and gas pipelines, platforms, oil productions or pumping, maritime accidents, attacks, piracy, insurgencies by sea. Issues in Persian Gulf, Red Sea, Straits of Hormuz and Suez Canal, Mediterranean, expansion of conflict. Biden and or Putin could face serious health crisis and or political challenge. Assassination attempts of world leaders, political candidates, and people of note. Big information leaks revealed or serious espionage allegations, mass accident, loss of life, or terrorist attack, accident at theme park or crush at sporting event, food poisoning or illness, dam failure, flooding on a river or lake, bridge and levee failures due to weather and or seismic activity, potential Midwest earthquake up to 5.5 causes nominal damage. That could be that New Madrid fault. 5.5 will rattle you, but it is not even close to a 6. Okay, the Richter scale is there's big jumps. There's big jumps in intensity as you move up the scale. It'll still be memorable if it happens, but it's probably going to be more like between 4.5, 5.0, but it could be up to a 5.5. I don't think it'll be as devastating as people claim. Okay. Maybe some things, maybe some of the older buildings, things like that. So keep your eyes peeled. Good news. What good news can we expect? Well, I think, again, we're going to still have a general form of optimism. I think we're going to see some things thwarted or stopped or halted. Plans may not, like plans to assassinate or hurt people could be stopped. We could see heroes, lots of heroes, people who do what seems impossible. We'll see kindness. We'll see kindness. We could see some good music come out this week, coming up. That could be nice. We could see some music drop or just trends come along that are uplifting. There could be some spoken word that comes out that is inspiring. And again, on a personal level, you can be fine, even in the midst of struggle. One of the things I wrote about in the Awake Space magazine this month was looking at free will and cultivating that. And people act like you either have determinism or you have free will. And that to me is a fallacy in an argument. It's both. It's what you do with circumstances that matter. I went through a lot of storms living in the Pacific Northwest, and big ones. I mean, we had a day where it rained 8 to 10 inches. And even in the Pacific Northwest, 8 to 10 inches in a day was way more than the ground could handle because it had been a very wet year already. And we had trees going root ball first with a breath of wind. And we lost power, and it was uncomfortable. I would try to make the best of it with my kids instead of complaint. Complaint will hurt you. Okay. Human beings lived without power long before we ever had it. Okay. Now, obviously, there are people who need that to stay alive. That's when we look at hospitals, etc., emergency equipment, etc. However, if it is an inconvenience and you can't use the microwave and you have to use the barbecue on the porch if you can, make it a game. Don't freak out. If the kids repeat how we speak. I was listening to a young child talking about an experience after a tornado. And he seemed really wise for his years, right? He was about 8 or 9 years old. Except when I listened, I basically heard him repeating what another adult had said when I really observed it. And it was less wisdom and more somebody had repeated something over and over out loud. And the child took it on. Okay. So when we're complaining, when we're worried, when we're scared, and we're verbalizing around children, just understand they hear everything. Everything. Kids are smart, first of all, but they do not have the discernment to understand. All they know is you are worried, you are scared. Okay. And so it's important to keep things as light as possible. Yes, we all get frustrated. And when it's hot and humid and the power's out and there's no AC and we're a little worried and we're a little scared, it can be hard. But it's one thing to be emotionally honest, and it's another thing to not regulate when we know emotions are contagious. And if you want an easier time with the kids, if stuff's going on, then try to keep it as light as possible. Okay. We can only prepare for what we can prepare for. There's an awful lot of water about to hit or is hitting Florida and Georgia. And it's hard to prepare for that. It's not a moral failure to experience a natural event. You didn't deserve it. You didn't not use your free will. Okay. You can only prepare how much you can prepare for. And hopefully, if you're one of my clients, I got you prepared. And I hope you're okay. There's a lot of water coming. And I think we're going to see some, you already had insurance companies bug out of Florida. Let's see what happens in Georgia. So have compassion on yourself, have compassion on the kids, have compassion on your neighbors, and this is the time we have to lean in. And unfortunately, it's always in crisis that we see people, the best of us, rise up, right? And it's okay if you go into the bathroom and have a cry. That's okay. I'm not saying don't feel your feelings. But again, when I had to deal with huge storms, and we didn't even make the news. We had 75-mile-an-hour winds gusting through, which isn't 100-mile-an-hour winds. No, but we had 150-foot fir trees going root ball first, which is very scary. And so making my family as safe as possible, occasionally taking a break, having a frustrated cry when it went on for days, because power doesn't always come back on right away after a storm. Trying to keep it light. It was always easier if this happened in the winter, because we could, a fire in the fireplace, and we had a fireplace, and I taught the kids how to bake potatoes in the fireplace, and cook in a can, all that fun Boy Scout stuff, camping stuff. Talked about how people used to cook before stoves and things like that. I would read books to them at night by candlelight or electric lamps that I had, battery operated lamps, right? It's a time to be cozy. If it's hot and muggy, that above all else, do your best, to stay in as good a frame of mind is pretty damn hard when it's so sticky and hot. So blessings to you, my friends, going through it. Just do your best. Take deep breaths. And I really do send as much comforting and healing energy as I can. But yeah, I think we're going to see the Middle East heat up a lot. I'll talk about that a little bit more in the Patreon only. I think Turkey might make some moves. And Turkey may face its own issue with terrorism. So be careful if you're in Turkey, if you're in Istanbul specifically. But even around the border areas of Turkey. Remember, governments don't reflect the people. Governments don't reflect the people. People in general want to have a home, want to have enough food to eat, need clean drinking water, want clean air. They want their babies to be okay, in general. And so it's really important, once again, to hold compassion for other. Okay. And even in the UK and Ireland, where right-wing people are rioting and looting, some of that's fear of scarcity, fear of being left out. It is a lack of compassion on the people who are immigrating. And people would have to immigrate if they had safe homes. And so instead of putting pressure on the government to make different decisions and not destabilize regions, I don't understand the right wing in their rioting, smashing stores and burning them and stealing things. I don't. Because if they're complaining about immigrants taking their jobs, then why would they take from other people? Because they weren't just hitting immigrant stores. Some were. And so if you're in the United Kingdom, hats off to you guys. Deep breaths. It's going to be a wild ride. Expect some government changes to come up as we move through the month in Great Britain. Doesn't mean, there might be a no confidence vote, but honestly, I think more likely, just addressing issues. We'll see. I think Labor holds, certainly, but you may see new leadership coming up in the party. Matilda and I kind of covered that last night in our event. You should be getting the link. Matilda's going to be sending that out. We had, oh my God, 229 people in the webinar last night. It was crazy. We went forever, almost 5 hours. Oh, we're tired. We're looking at how we're going to do that. I talked a little bit about that at the top of the show. We're looking at how we're going to plan our year going forward with Sassy Seers, our podcast, which we're on hiatus from. But if you want a good laugh, if you're needing a change of mind, that we keep that one really light because we get serious in our own podcasts. And so we're keeping Sassy Seers, just that two middle-aged women after work. I'm an astrologer. She's a professional medium. Talking shop and chilling out and laughing. A lot of laughter. And because that's what we need right now. We need more laughter. We need more goodwill. We need people who are willing to step up to the plate. And as my great grandma used to say is, you can cry or you can laugh. One of them feels better than the other. And that's what I'm going to end you with, guys. I'm Laurie Rivers, and I appreciate you listening. If you're a patron, thank you so much for your support. You're amazing. Stay tuned for more information coming out this month and things we're going to do together. It's exciting. Where we're headed. And I just want you to know, we're breaking all records on our listenership. Like, the last episode had more listens and downloads than we've ever had in the history of the show. So that tells me, since we've kind of gone down a little bit in the charts, that means somebody's having to spend some ad dollars. So that's cool, because we don't do ad dollars. We just organically put ourselves out here, and you show up every single week, and thank you. All right, have a good week, because you really can.